And when we think about famous voices from the island, there are certainly a few singers that pop into mind, but a group of islanders are known for their voices in a community in Cuba.
Have you got any new information?
Yes, but now we have to return to the house to see if they've called again. See you there.
When Susan saw that everybody was back, but Rebecca was not among them, she started to cry.
Where is Rebecca? Oh God, they are going to kill her.
She almost fainted.
5 years ago, the Friends voiced a recording that is used to teach English to thousands of Cuban students. The textbook version of the recording was just released, and the Cuban writers are visiting the island this week. The islanders met English professor Daniel Mena Marquez while vacationing in Cuba, and they became friends. Marquez wanted a recording of his textbook, so PEI music producer Perry Williams got some friends together and helped out. Nancy Russell met Perry and Susan Williams and Daniel Mena Marquez to find out more.
How did the idea of a recording come up?
Well, I think it was the second trip that maybe we were visiting with Daniel and Marina, and I just sort of mentioned, I have a recording studio at home, and we do a little bit of production work, and he said, maybe you could record the mantra for me. And of course, I just thought it was his textbook. So I said, well, sure, just email the text to me, and I'll record it. I didn't realize that it was a murder mystery where there were a whole cast of characters. So once we got the text and we realized that was the case, we thought, maybe we can do it like it's a radio play. So we invited a bunch of our friends out to our house, and many of them who had met Daniel, actually. So it wasn't the second year, it must have been the second or third or fourth year, because there were several people who had met Daniel and been to his house. And so we had a bit of a Cuban night here, and part of that evening was the recording session that we just did around our kitchen table rather than in the studio, as a surprise to Daniel as well. When we went back to Cuba a few weeks later, we took CD copies, and he was expecting just to hear me reading all of the text, and when he heard it, he was quite pleased. And so he's been using that in his classes, those resources, ever since then. So there were a lot of people, literally hundreds of people in Cuba and now in Ecuador, where he's teaching in Ecuador, who are learning English, listening to a whole load of PE Islanders reading the text, which is really neat. Yeah.
My name is Daniel Mena. I'm from Cuba. I'm a teacher of English.
What is the mantra?
This is an approach, using the language, not analyzing the language. I invented a story. It is a story of two families who live in London, and they go to Germany on vacation. And a man and a lady met, and they fell in love, and there was a murder later on. And yes, it's a very nice story, and students like it. And I have the pleasure to listen to my friends' voices every day in Cuba, even though they are far away in PEI. And that's why I'm here, because they invited me to come here and to meet the rest of the people. I call them the crew.
How do your students react when they hear this group acting out the murder mystery?
Well, they know all the characters in the story, because the main character in my story is Susan. And it happened that Susan Williams is my friend, and she recorded the part of Susan.
Okay, well, let's bring in Susan. What has it been like for you being part of these recordings?
Well, it started off just being great fun. We developed this friendship with the whole family. We did the recording, and then now when we visit them in Cuba, we meet some of Daniel's students, and it's quite interesting. We meet them on the street when we're walking. We call him King of Kensington in Ciega de Avila. And we're walking down the street with him. He introduces us to his students, and they recognize our voices immediately. Then they'll hear Perry speak, and they'll say, "Oh, you're the narrator." Or they'll hear Doug Millington's voice when he speaks to them, and he'll say hello, and they'll say, "Oh, the inspector."
Perry, what is it like for you seeing what these recordings have become?
Well, it is really interesting, and I must say it's a very odd experience when we're actually in Ciega de Avila, because the first few times that happened, just as Sue said, everything is fine. You're meeting Daniel's friends or his former students, and really, whenever you speak, everything just stops immediately, and they look at you like, oh my, they can't believe it. You're the guy that we hear every day in class, right? And it was really quite funny. A few years ago, there were several of us there, and the word was out. The word got out in the afternoon that the people on the mantra are all at Daniel's house. So that evening, of course, there was the parade of students all coming in to meet the Canadians, right? To meet everyone that's on the recording. So it's terrific. It really is. And it was something that, for us, it was a lot of fun to do, and it wasn't a lot of work. It was one evening and then it's some editing to sort of make it all work. But for Daniel, it's been such an advantage for him to have actual different voices, and it makes it more entertaining for the students. And most of the little, there's a lot more to his program and his curriculum than just the recording, obviously. But it's just so nice for him. It makes it so much a better experience for his students.
There is a little bit of a PEI celebrity connection. You're all celebrities, but there's somebody who Prince Edward Islanders would know. Tell me about that connection.
Oh, well, on Mantra 2, the second one that we recorded for Daniel, one of the new characters that was added in that story was an inspector from Scotland Yard. So we thought, well, if we're going to have someone with a Scottish accent, we might as well have the real deal. So we called on our friend Peter Bevan Baker, who most of the listeners would recognize his voice. On the recording, I asked Pete to sort of ramp up the Scottish accent a little bit. So he's laying it on pretty thick on the recording, which is fun for all of us. It was a lot of fun to have Peter involved in that. And there are quite a few carryover characters from the first one to the second one. Mantra 3 is yet to be done. So if there's anyone out there who's really keen to be on a Cuban language instruction disc, just give me a call and I'll work you into the story.
So what is next is, to continue with our friendship and try to make another book, write another book, so that my friends will record it here in PEI. I'm really grateful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Daniel Mena Marquez speaking with the CBC's Nancy Russell. We also heard from Perry and Susan Williams.